Welcome to episode 123. I'm your host, Gustavo Dantas, and today we have Aaron Benz. I'm going to give a quick introduction here. Aaron is a black belt under the four-time world champion, Bernardo Faria, and he has a long entrepreneurial career, which has included such ventures as the Jiu-Jitsu, Gainesville Digital Agency, and Rise K9 Training. For the last 7 years, he has worked for Fanatics LLC, and it has part of the growth of BJJ Fanatics, the world's premier resource for digital BJJ instruction. And Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm a big fan.
Cool. And for people who don't know too, we can talk a little bit about your YouTube channel. Matter of fact, that's how I found out about you and your work. I'm always researching, studying jiu-jitsu and looking to different things. Sometimes I go in, there's a specific topic that I want per se, right? So I just go and I'll just listen to what people have to say and to share. So I just go over a bunch of them. That's how I found you, and I saw some different videos. I'm like, man, and I was watching when you were, because you got your black belt recently, right? Fairly recently.
Yep, just about 3 months ago now.
Yeah, so I've been watching maybe a few years ago when you started. So really good channel, man. Congratulations. For people who don't know, can you maybe explain a little more, give your
for sure. Yeah, my channel is Aaron Benzrihem BJJ. It's kind of a mouthful. So it's, if you type in Aaron Benz on YouTube, I'm sure some of the videos will pop up. But I started that channel. It's funny because, a lot of the discussion here will probably be about entrepreneurship. And one of my mentors in entrepreneurship and jiu-jitsu has been my coach, Bernardo Faria. And Bernardo has a theory that anybody who's, competitive and wants to make a living off of jiu-jitsu or have some type of monetization for their jiu-jitsu should have a YouTube channel. Because as you know, those who do jiu-jitsu, everybody has something to share. Everybody has their own unique interpretation on some certain technique. And, fortunately for me, with Bernardo leading the way with his YouTube channel, he would tell me, he's like, man, you're a good instructor. Why don't you start a YouTube? And I was always kind of shy to do it. But he was like, look, I'm telling you, just film one video and, see how it does and go from there. And I started it a year and a half or 2 years ago. And I have over about 7,000 subscribers and then tons of views. I mean, almost 1 million or maybe a little bit over 1 million views now total. And it's just incredible, man. It's I said when I started the channel, I was like, if I can help one person's jiu-jitsu, my mission here is accomplished. And it's grown so far beyond that. And it keeps me motivated to make it. And for anybody who's aspiring to find a way to monetize their jiu-jitsu, it's a long-term investment because you don't make much money off of YouTube initially. But again, long-term for the time put in, 5 years or 10 years down the road, if you get to 50,000, 100,000 subscribers, it's going to bring in a couple $1,000s a month, and you'll be able to recoup that time that you put in the beginning with some revenue.
That's cool. And something that you mentioned too, I think a lot of people in a similar boat that they might be thinking about starting a channel, say like, man, I'm just a brown belt, or maybe I'm a purple belt. You know what I mean? So if you let that voice, hold you back, you wouldn't, I wouldn't even know. Maybe it would take me longer to find out about you. That's how I found out, is through YouTube. So I think it's a good inspiration for a lot of people who haven't achieved the black belt and they're like, man, why people to watch me or whatever. So if you have the passion for what you do and you're knowledgeable, man, just put it out there. So yeah, congratulations, man. Really cool channel. So I'm always that's one of the channels that I'm, in any chance I have, I'm looking at a topic and I see that you teach and I go there and check it out. So really cool.
I appreciate that.
So tell us, man, how jiu-jitsu, martial arts in general, or more specifically jiu-jitsu, show up in your life?
Yeah, so I was actually a pretty bad kid when I was younger. I'm 27 and I started jiu-jitsu when I was 15 years old. I can't remember exactly now. It was like the end of 14 to 15 because I remember I was in high school. And I had been doing some boxing classes because I would get into some fights and just was kind of an aggressive kid, a little misguided. And my parents were like, we should try martial arts. So we tried boxing. And then I did some Jeet Kune Do when I was 12, 13, and 14. And I remember getting to the grappling portion of Jeet Kune Do and thinking it was incredible. And I was a fan of like the UFC and mixed martial arts. So a no-gi gym run by like a purple belt opened up, 5 minutes from my house. And I was like, Mom, take me there. I want to try it. And man, the first day, first lesson, I was hooked because at this point I had 2 or 3 years of martial arts experience and I had some grappling experience. And the minute I walked in and started the sparring, I went with the instructor who was a purple belt. And I remember I told this story on another podcast I did. He grabbed my wrist, put his feet on my hips, lifted me in the air for like a tomenagi, and I ended up in an arm bar, and I had no idea what happened. And I was like, that's it, I'm done. I have to do this. Like, I have to learn how to do that. And from there, the rest is history. I've pretty much been 100% consistent since that day. I took a couple months off my senior year of high school when I was, busy doing other things like chasing girls and just being a young man. And then I got back into it more than ever in college. And I actually didn't start the gi until I was 18 in college. And that was when I started training every day.
Right on. And what did you say? I know it was a long time ago, but what did you say some of the benefits that maybe you noticed or even your family noticed or you training jiu-jitsu?
Man,
the down, how was it?
They were instantaneous. For somebody who's kind of, okay, so if you want a little context for who I am, I was the middle child and I had a younger sister who's 3 years younger and an older brother who's 2 years older. And my older and younger siblings, they got the athletic genes. People that see me now are like, oh, you're athletic. I'm like, no. My brother was extremely athletic. I'm talking like 40-yard dash is a good metric to measure athleticism. He could do it in 4.4 seconds, a real 4.4 seconds. He was incredible. And he had all these, soccer scholarship opportunities. And my sister was the same. And for me, I was, like I said, I was misguided. I was, being aggressive, getting into fights because I didn't like any of the sports. So the minute I fell in love with jiu-jitsu the way that I did, I immediately calmed down. I immediately found something to cling to, something that I was passionate about. And just having an outlet like that for, a growing young boy or girl, I think is important because you become surrounded by people that are like-minded. And I think one of the benefits of jiu-jitsu for the younger crowd, specifically the teenagers, is that you get immersed into an adult community. So you're kind of forced to mature with the level of the people that you're around. You 100%. Talk to doctors, lawyers, and for somebody who's 14, 15, 16, you can get into a lot of dumb things, right? There's a lot of influences at that age. But when you have those influences guiding you, it's the benefits are endless and it's immeasurable how good that is for a kid like that.
Yeah, I think one of the most common things that we hear in jiu-jitsu, I started when I was 14, about 14 or 15. But I think one of the common things that you hear is everyone's like, man, I wish I had started younger. You know what I mean? That's something. And I would have so much fun as a kid if I did have the opportunity to get involved with training or competing. And now it's interesting that we're recording this May 2021. I always like to mention the date. Someone might be listening to this in 10 years from now. But now I'm getting, because I used to teach kids many, many, many years ago. And for many years I did. And now I've been teaching the teens, which is like the class about 10 to 13. So it has been like a really cool experience and challenge for me, but like bringing me back, like, man, how much fun would I have if I had the opportunity to get involved with competitions? And I'm actually prepared to send like a letter to the parents, because we're going to start like now having competitions. There are a lot of new students and kind of introduce to them, talking about the benefits. I ask like, what some of the benefits you have noticed in class. And I always mention, for anyone that is listening and then you have kids training, and if you've been training jiu-jitsu for a while, you know that, I mean, you don't have to compete to experience the benefits of jiu-jitsu. However, if you want to amplify the power of this personal development tool called jiu-jitsu, competition is a great way to do so. And that's what I try to share with them. That taught me one of the biggest lessons that I learned in jiu-jitsu right at the beginning is you don't get things that you want, the time that you want, any way you want. Like, I want to win this tournament. I'm going to win because I want to win. Like, no. Things not always like that, and that teach kids young that you're not always going to get the job that you want. You're not going to always close the deal that you want or the time that you want. So I think those lessons little by little start to get into them. So I'm a huge fan of competition, especially individual sport like that in jiu-jitsu, to teach that sense of personal responsibility, for them.
That was really well put on how it amplifies the benefits you're already getting, because it's true, man. You learn so quickly in a competitive aspect when you go to your first, second, third, fourth competition, even 50th, that you get what you put in. You know, you can't go twice a week and expect to beat somebody who's training 6 days a week, twice a day. And it's really important for not just kids, for adults, even at a certain point, to learn that, because
Absolutely.
it just shows you that, like I said, you get what you put in, and competition does amplify all the benefits of jiu-jitsu. And like, just like you, because I taught at Bernardo's for 3 years, and before that I taught. And students always ask me, should I compete? And I would always tell them, you don't need to compete. It's not a necessity. You're still going to get benefits. You're still going to grow as a practitioner. But if you compete, the experience is worth so much more outside the realm of jiu-jitsu, because you're going to learn so many things about yourself and so many other things, because competition is nerve-wracking. You learn how to deal with the pressure. You learn how to react under pressure. You learn how to control your emotions. There's just so many other benefits that I think I would recommend people to try competing at least once. But again, if they don't want to, I understand that as well. Everybody's different. So
Yeah, and I mean, this is a no-brainer, of course, question for you, but it's like if you think about all the years that you have in training, and you had two journeys, one that you have never competed before, and which would it be great, jiu-jitsu to make a great impact in your life, you to feel self-confident, you know, all that stuff would be great. But you cannot even imagine this whole journey without the competition. There's the comparison of the emotional, the mental growth that you have from experience those. You cannot even compare. It would be such a completely different journey. Again, it's just, it gets amplified in such a crazy way, you know, that
yeah.
man, highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question to ask. What would my journey have been like without competing? Because I've competed so many times that it would be so much different, I bet. I mean, it also gives you confidence to know, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think when you compete and you go out there and see, you know, what it's like to test yourself against somebody who you don't know, who's legitimately trying to get after you at their best and most potential, I think it gives you the confidence to know when you're in the gym that you've been there, you've done that, and that, you know, it's almost a more humbling experience. I find that competitors, unless they're going with each other, don't have as much ego when they roll in the gym, because they know they're going to compete against other people. Again, unless it's a competition class, then it's people are going crazy, right?
Yeah, for sure. So now tell us, when was your first entrepreneurial journey? When your entrepreneurial journey started, when was your first entrepreneurial endeavor that you start, you know, kind of, is that something that early you felt like you're always geared towards that, towards entrepreneurship?
I guess the parallels between why I fell in love with jiu-jitsu would also be why I fell in love with entrepreneurship. And it goes back to that misguided teenage mentality that I had. I was always a rebel. I didn't want to play by the rules. And I never really saw myself being somebody who would get a degree and get a job based off of that degree. It just wasn't something I wanted to do, partially because I didn't like the fact that somebody would control the outcome of my life, meaning, you know, the level of income that you can get would likely be controlled. Obviously, there's always exceptions. You know, you can get a degree and start a business still. I'm not speaking out negatively against school whatsoever at all. I'm just saying, in my particular scenario, I grew up in a family where my father owned businesses, and I would see him flourish and expand, and I would also see him crash and lose things. I was fortunate to see the ups and the downs. There was times when things were great and he was driving a Porsche, and there was times when his car was getting repoed, and, you know, he went and just bought a jalopy. So seeing that and watching him, I knew that the one thing that, through the ups and the downs, that remained consistent was his ability to control the outcome. And I think that resonated with me. And my first journey was when I was 18. And it goes to that point of controlling your outcome. I was obsessed with jiu-jitsu, and I was nowhere near good enough to get a sponsor. I was like a fourth stripe white belt, and I had done like 2 competitions and I hadn't even won. But I was like, man, I wish I had a sponsor to, you know, support me to go compete more. It was expensive. I was in college. It was an expensive journey. So I talked to my older brother, who was also in college, and he doesn't do jiu-jitsu much. You know, he's trained with me a handful of times. And, you know, he was like, you should just sponsor yourself, start something. And so, going back to controlling my own outcome, I was like, you know, I do want to do that. I want to sponsor myself. So I looked at what brands I wanted sponsors from and drew inspiration from them. And I started a company called The Jiu-Jitsu with my brother. And I knew nothing about website development, social media, or anything like that. But I went to the University of YouTube, typed in some videos and watched how to build a website, how to market that website, how to build a brand, hours upon hours upon hours. And the excitement that I had during that time period, I don't think I've felt anything like that to this day. Like my first endeavor, like I would go to bed at 4 a.m. and wake up at 7 a.m. ready, because I just wanted to keep growing that thing with this goal of sponsoring myself. And it worked. We started that company, the Jiu-Jitsu. The Facebook grew to over 20,000 likes. The Instagram grew to 5,000 likes. We had articles trend with over 1 million reads, and we started to monetize it with a brand. We had a guy make a logo for us. I took all the pictures, the video, I built the website. I did everything. My brother was kind of like my investor, who gave me like a couple $100 to buy some hats. And with like a couple $100, I grew that business to where we sold, I think it was like over $30,000 worth of hats, and I got to compete for free. I just used the money to pay for my competitions, and I sponsored myself. So that right there was enough proof of concept for me to take that mold and start to expand it, which that led me to all my other endeavors and businesses and to where I am today. For example, I took the recipe from that business because I didn't do well with the finances. And I was like, you know what, instead of struggling to get merchandise and sell it, I was like, why don't I take the skill sets that I attributed towards that, and I should go and freelance those for somebody who needs that. So then I started my next company at about, I was 21, which was Gainesville Digital Agency, where I would basically build websites, Facebook market, take the exact same template I used for the Jiu-Jitsu and apply it to other businesses. And I got a bunch of accounts paying a monthly fee to do that. And it grew really well. And then that business opened the door to me being the senior product manager today for Fanatics, because I met Bernardo through that business. It was a combination of both. So, and I could tell that story if you want.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Yeah. Basically what happened was I had the Jiu-Jitsu. I put it on the back burner for Gainesville Digital Agency to see which would make more money. And I found out that I was pretty passionate about both. So to start back the Jiu-Jitsu, I was like, let me interview somebody, because we used to do a lot of interviews. And I chose Bernardo. And at the time I was 20 or 21, and I interviewed Bernardo. And we had a 20-minute interview that was good, but our phone call was about 2 hours long. And we discussed business, because he was becoming extremely passionate about business. And so what ended up happening was he found out that I had done this digital marketing with Gainesville Digital Agency, that I was a Jiu-Jitsu purple belt at the time. And he was like, hey, you know, my partner, Michael Zenga, and I just started BJJ Fanatics, and we need guys like you. You know, we literally just started it. Would you like to jump on board and help us? And at the time I was a little skeptical because I hadn't heard of it, but I was like, yeah, sure. I'll do some blogs for you. I'll do some SEO based writing, and let's see how it goes. And so I did a couple blogs, and they loved the content. And so they said, can you do this? And one thing led to another. And this was 6 or 7 years ago. And fortunately, I was pretty much the first employee there. And I just continued to grow and become a pivotal part of the growth for the overall company. And I'm still with them today, full time, more than full time. And it's been a great journey growing with the company like that, because it's something that I truly believe in, the mission. You know, it's bringing world-class jiu-jitsu and more now, world-class wrestling, world-class conditioning to the palm of people's hands, which I think is where the future is going to be for a lot of people with different outlets, different sports. And yeah, man, the rest is pretty much history. It's been incredible. There's been other businesses in there that were like side jobs, and you know, my wife and I own a dog training business. But
I was going to ask you about the Rise Canine training, right?
Yeah. So after being with Fanatics, so in my journey with Fanatics, Bernardo and Michael persuaded me to move to Boston, half to train with Bernardo and to teach at his academy and manage his academy, and half to grow with the company. Even though I work remote, I wanted to be more in person. So I moved to Boston 3.5 years ago. I lived there for 3 years, and I went there with my, at the time, girlfriend, who became my fiance. And having known what I knew in the past with websites and marketing and everything that I do for Fanatics, I told her to quit her job. And I'm not going to take responsibility for it, or she's going to watch this and yell at me. But I feel like I helped mold her into an entrepreneur, because she didn't come from that background. And she was the head dog trainer at Petco Boston, which is one of the nation's largest Petcos. And she was responsible for training hundreds of dogs. And I would ask her, I was like, what's your pay? Like, what do they do? And they would do an hourly rate. with like a 20% commission per account. And I thought that that was selling herself short so badly. I was like, think about this. And I just showed her the math. I'm like, if you do 100 dogs and you get 20% of the commission in a month, imagine if you just did 50 and you got 100% of the proceeds. And she was really skeptical. She's like, I don't know if I have the confidence. I don't know if I want to do it. The same emotions that any first-time business owner would have. But I kept pushing her. I would just keep nudging her, like, come on, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'll do everything for you on the digital end. You just got to be the face of it and train. And so finally she's like, okay, build me a website. Let's work together on it. I'll tell you what to say. So together we created this website. We created the Facebook, the Instagram. We created brochures, business cards, all the typical elements of a business. And it was a little bit unique in a sense that it was my first, business in the pet industry, but it was still a service-based industry, which I was managing Bernardo's Academy. So there was a lot of parallels between how you acquire clients there and how you acquire clients at the Academy. There was a lot of parallels with how I acquired clients for Gainesville Digital Agency. And it grew so quickly. It grew to the point where we could have hired more employees, but she didn't want to. And she was full within 4 weeks. She had 30 dogs a week. She was doing 5 dogs a week, 5 days a week, 6 days a week. It got to 7. I think she had 36 dogs a week at one point. And it was incredible, man. And she's thrilled that she did it. Look, when you control your outcome, the possibilities are endless. I can tell you from fiscal standpoint that she made what she made at Petco in a year and a month. And it's, we just recently moved to Florida. We took the exact same template that we used in Boston and we applied it to Florida. And once again, it's growing to the point where we have a waiting list. And I don't ever push her because although we're 50-50 on the business, it's her baby. Mm-hmm. And she's the boss. I listen to her. To me, I'm like, let's get a store. Let's hire people. Let's expand. And she's like, look, we're not dying. We're not desperate for money. We didn't start this business to make money. We started it because I'm passionate about what I do, and I let her kind of control that. I think as she gets more and more and more comfortable, one day you'll see some Rise Canine trainings pop up all over the place, but we'll see.
Beautiful, man. That's really cool. Congrats. Big props to her taking, as you mentioned, the first step is always the tough one. Should I do it? Should I not do it? So what did you say in all your entrepreneurial journey? What are some of the biggest struggles, regardless of what business, that you went through that you just had no idea?
I mean, the most intimidating factor is always the unknown, right? The cause of anxiety is unknown. It's the things that are out of your control. And so I think that the first factor that anyone should ever consider, and what I was most nervous about and what was the biggest speed bump, was just starting. And anytime I started doing something that I didn't know how to do, like the anxiety associated with figuring it out. For example, I attribute my growth with Fanatics to the position where I'm at now. And I'm sure Michael Zeng and Bernardo would agree. I never said no. No matter what they asked me in the beginning, before it was huge, they're like, do you know how to code this? Yeah, I can figure it out. Yeah, I'll do it. And that's when I would get the most nervous because I'd overcommit. And I got in trouble overcommitting before because I would commit to things that I couldn't do. So hindsight is 20/20. I would definitely be a little bit more cautious of what I commit to. But I also attribute the overcommitment to why I became so multifaceted and learned so many different things, because I would just commit to everything and try to learn it. And that was always like the anxiety in my stomach when I would say, like, yeah, I can build a video site, hosting videos with clickable chapters. Sure, I can do that. And then meanwhile, I'm like, I have no idea how to do that. So I'm at home, like struggling, staying up all night, drinking coffee, watching videos, buying courses, trying to figure it out. But it's all a part of the growth. But man, that for me is something that I clearly remember the days when I would take jobs that I had no idea how to do and have to figure it out. And again, it's like, it's 50-50 on how I feel. I feel it was a big part of my growth, but I also feel like it was a lot of speed bumps where the anxiety associated with it was like hectic.
So what piece of advice would you give to the younger Aaron when you started your entrepreneurial journey? That's something that you look back right now, be like, oh, wow, that would be handy back then. Not that you want anything different, because you have to be where you're at today, you have to live
Yeah.
all your experience. But just looking back, if you could see an entrepreneur like in a very similar situation, what would you tell them?
The first thing I would probably say is to do more research on topics that you're going to be working on and to read. And the second thing that I would say is probably to slow down. So that's something I've learned as I've gotten older, and I'm still learning every day. Like I tell people, I'm dumb, man. Like I gotta keep learning every day. And slowing down is a big thing. I always tried to move fast, and sometimes you want to get things done quickly, and it comes with imperfections that are going to cost you down the road. So I would rush through something and I would do it improperly, and then months later it would come back to bite me. You know, whether it was software on a website, whether it was a cheap way to do something. If anyone listening knows about websites, like installing like a cheap widget to be able to do something on the site and not doing it properly, it just kind of came back to bite me. So research and slowing down go hand in hand. That's probably something I would tell myself, because I definitely still to this day have a habit of like, I like to get things done. I like to get things done yesterday. That's my favorite saying. You know, and that kind of comes too from having another mentor, Michael Zenga. His favorite thing to say, he might get mad at me for putting him on the spot here, but I would be like, yeah, you want me to do that? He would always laugh. He's super nice. And he'd be like, yeah, you can do it, but it would have been better if it was done yesterday, but that's okay. And so I kind of like took that mentality and ran with it. But I think slowing down and doing more research on things is really important.
Cool. Let's change gears. Let's talk a little bit about Jiu-Jitsu. So what are some of the big inspirations as far as instruction that you have that influence your style of teaching?
Yeah. So for teaching, it's a little different. For my style of like how I roll, I always had this dream of being a mixture of Marcelo Garcia and Rafa Mendes. Those are the two guys that I got my brown belt from Marcel, and those are the two guys that I like idolized, and I just wanted to be more like them. My teaching style, it probably comes from my first coach in the gi, who was he's a black belt under Marcelo, and he gave me all my belts. He gave me my brown with Marcelo, basically. It's a odd story. Marcelo was supposed to come to a seminar and promote me to brown with him, and unfortunately he didn't. So he called Marcelo and was like, hey, you know, Marcelo ran into trouble. Can I promote him with your blessing? And Marcelo was like, yes, let's give Aaron the brown belt. And so he did, and then called me, and it was like on the phone. It was pretty cool. But Khan is the guy's name, Khan Ying. And Khan is, in my opinion, and I'm biased, obviously, but in my opinion, he's the best instructor I know. He's the best instructor I've ever known. And, you know, he's a Ivy League school graduate. He has a degree from Columbia University. His undergrad was Cornell University. He's a very well-read and a very well-educated guy. He's an average jiu-jitsu practitioner with 3 kids. I don't know his age now, so Khan's going to listen to this for sure, and he's going to be pissed at me. I think he's in his 40s still. And sorry about that. When I met him, he was in his 40s. And he basically just was very well articulated when he taught. He had just a way of translating information that was really, really good. So I would always look at him and watch him teach, and I was fascinated by how well the students understood it. And I was like, I want to emulate that somehow. And so when I would start teaching, I would ask for pointers. I would use a lot of the same phrases that he would say. Like, here's a silly example. He would always use the term precarious, right? He would say, when you're doing this submission, you're in a precarious position because your foot is exposed and there's some vulnerability. And so I listened to the verbiage, and I was like, okay, I need to take that verbiage. I need to use it because it really, really demonstrates in a very transparent way what's going on. And that's what I want to do. And so, like, if you heard him teach, because a lot of people are like, you're such a good teacher on YouTube, and that's nice. And I think I'm not, but it is what it is. I think he's really good. If they watched him teach, they'd be like, I see the resemblance for sure. So Khan Ying.
And what did you say a difference between the beginning of your YouTube journey teaching, and then you notice that things that you felt like you're doing better since the beginning? And that's everything from showing to working the camera, you know, like the whole experience with that.
Sorry, what would I say from the beginning?
Yeah, like when you start doing your videos on YouTube and looking now, what are some of the difference that you see that you're doing a better job than the beginning when you start
Oh,
teaching on YouTube? And that would be like good tips for people who teach on YouTube as well.
gotcha. Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood. So the first thing is camera shyness, right? In the beginning, I can tell I was a little bit more contained. I was a little bit hesitant to show my personality. My wife would always help me film, and she would always look at me and say, "You need to show your personality more. People will like you." And I was like, "I know, but like I don't, I joke around sometimes when I teach. I try to laugh. I smile a lot because I enjoy it. I love what I'm doing, and to show that authenticity, I think is my biggest tip to people who do YouTube. Whether you're funny, sarcastic, witty, whatever your personality is, let that emulate in the way that you teach, because people will cling to it. And I realize that with YouTube, it's a virtual way of translating information. And in the virtual world, it's hard for us to build that person to person relationship. So the more that you allow yourself to express your personality, the more your subscribers feel they actually know you. And so I'm still not where I want to be as far as showing my personality 100% and laughing with my subscribers, but I want to feel as though like when I'm teaching to a friend, and I hope that my subscribers would consider me somebody that we would get along with and be friends, because I just try to show that. And again, I attribute a lot of that success to my wife with YouTube, because she would always get at me like, show your personality more, be funnier, be yourself, people will like you. And in the beginning, when I watched my early videos, back to your question, I could definitely tell I was contained. That was like the main thing. As far as like teaching ability, I think a lot of the things I taught, I would still teach relatively similar. Obviously, we're always learning, always evolving. I say when you teach a technique twice, you teach it better. When you teach it a third time, you teach it even better. So the more you teach the same technique, the better it's going to get. But I think for the actual video content, just emulating my personality more and just being who I really am. Because, I'm sure people that have taken classes with me will listen to this podcast. When I'm in person, I think that I definitely try to make the class really fun and even funny in a way. So that's something that I would try to.
Now, besides the class, training jiu-jitsu, how you study jiu-jitsu, do you look more into instructionals, tournament breakdowns, how you like to study?
So you would be surprised. As a blue belt, I did actually watch a lot of YouTube videos. Once I got to purple, I probably from Fanatics only watched, maybe 4 or 5 out of the 1,000 there, because when I watch them, I watch them. Like I watch it and I watch it again and I watch it again and I watch it again and I take notes, because I always miss something. I always miss something. And I think I don't miss it. But the more that I watch it, like for example, if you watch a John Danaher, video, it's 20 minutes on one technique. Regardless of whether or not you think you may be able to understand the technique in its entirety after watching it once, I'm doubtful that anybody could. So to hear, his interpretation of it, I would watch it again, and write it down. And other than that, the way that I learned most personally was actually flow rolling with people that were a little bit less skilled than I was, but to see their skills. So, for example, if I was a purple, to roll with a blue, and if I was a brown, to roll with a purple at a lower pace for myself, to try to understand exactly what's going on. When I say lower pace, I mean like 75, 80%. I don't mean like 20, 30%. But those rolls, when I can remember every little subtlety and nuance that happened in the roll, helped me the most, I think. Now, there's two different types of progression, right? There's your competitive progression, which I think is very associated with confidence, cardio, tenacity. How hard can you go? For how long can you go that hard? And then there's the technical progression, which is exactly what it says, the technique. How well can you do a technique? How well do you know it? How well do you understand it? So for my technical progression, the flow rolls, going a little bit slower and trying to remember everything, were the best. Because when I go to a competition class and I roll with guys my skill level or better, and it's try to kill each other, kill or be killed, sometimes I don't even remember the roll, because I'm allowing my instinct to take over and I'm reacting. And so I can't really go home and analyze that as well as I could if I roll in a flowy state. So again, there's in my opinion, and I've talked about this with my students, there's two different types of progression, right? There's that competitive progression where how well do you perform at your best, hardest, and then there's your technical progression. Because sometimes, and I think you would agree with this, the most technical guys don't even compete. They're just in the gym because they just wouldn't compete well. They go to the competition and it's just different. It's just, you know, how much. I truly believe the competition is 90% mental. I think if you go to the worlds at purple, brown, or black, a lot of those guys have the ability to win. Their skill levels are very well matched. Obviously, there's always going to be exceptions, but I think that it goes down to who's going to be able to perform on that day, who's got a clear head that's going to go in there and be able to execute. And so, again, I've seen guys in the gym that are like incredible. I mean, they kill everyone in the gym. Their technique is flawless. And then they go to the tournament and it's just, they choke for whatever reason. I'm not judging them for it, but they do. And so, again, competitive progression, technical progression. My technical progression comes a lot from those roles.
Yeah, I always mention about the IBJJF, the GI Worlds. When you, I mean, for you to make to the second day, you know, to be in the final 8, man, all those guys are in shape. All those guys are so well prepared technically. Something's going to have to make the difference. And definitely the mental, who is going to be able to perform like they do at the academy. And that it's not an easy thing. And the guys that can do that consistently, they're one of the best guys in the world. I always mention, you know, like probably two close friends of mine, for people who maybe are new to jiu-jitsu, not familiar, but Vitor Shaolin and Robson Moore. Vitor Shaolin is a 3-time world champion. He has an academy in New Jersey and New York, and Robson Moore has a school. He's a 5-time world champion. He lives in Tampa. There are 2 guys that I had the opportunity, we trained together in Brazil back in the 90s, and be able to see like, man, look at those guys training. And then you look at them competing, like, oh my God, they're doing the exact same thing. There's no hesitation. And Hobson was even to a different level. Somehow he of course he trains well, but he would get to perform even better. It's just crazy to see. Like it's like he turned a notch up with the speed, and everything he does is just very, very strange to even try to explain. But I would notice, like, man, there's an extra speed going on here, and be able to do this with consistency is not by accident that he won as a black belt 5-time, which is rare to see, to be able to. So what are some of the guys that you had opportunity to maybe train or watch training, and then you see like, wow, this guy's a great performer, where whatever he's doing at the academy, he's actually pulling it off at the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of people that I've been fortunate to train with. Some of them, you know, are not even like well-known world-class guys, but I have friends of mine, like a friend of mine named Austin, who would do local tournaments and just sweep the floor every time at the lower belts. And my friend Stuart, and they didn't even compete like competitively. When I say competitively, I mean like the upper echelon, the worlds, the pans, the nogi worlds, the nogi pans, etc. But they would go to local tournaments, and they would happen to be a pan champion in their division at blue or purple, and they would kill him. And I would just be shocked, like, and ask them, why don't they compete? And they're like, oh, I just do it for fun. And I think some of the guys had almost no pressure. You know, they just went in there just with no pressure and did well. From a competitive aspect, you know, like I said, the Mendez brothers for me were incredible. Those were guys that I personally didn't train with, but I watched hours upon hours of rolling footage and competition footage. And I would see the footage of them rolling in the gym, and then I would see them rolling in the competition. And similar to what you mentioned about Hops and Mora, it was like they were better in the tournament. I mean, it was incredible to watch. So those were guys that were super influential for me. And at Bernardo's, I trained with a lot of guys that, you know, did really well in competition. My friend Giancarlo Bodoni, who just won the no-gi black belt pans just last weekend. It was his first black belt pans at no-gi, I believe. He had won brown belt the year before. He's a guy that I look up to. He's a good friend of mine. We both taught at the academy together, because in the gym, he has such a good attitude. He trains super well. But man, when, like, again, with Hobson, when he goes to the tournament, he performs even better. And it's pretty incredible to see. And he's a very technical guy. So, you know, guys like that have always inspired me.
I just remember thinking about like that no pressure type of deal. Of course, if being for everyone's listening, maybe you don't know much about the story of BJ Penn, but yeah, he won the worlds with what, like maybe he got his black belt with 3.5 years of training, just crazy. But before that, in 90, I think it might be in 98, he went to the worlds to compete as a blue belt. He ended up losing the finals of the blue belt. I believe it was 1998. And then his brother Regan went there to watch him. He was a white belt. He went there to watch. And then when he was there, Sharuto, which is a friend of mine that was teaching in Hawaii, was instructor. So like, man, why don't you compete? You're ready here. I'll give you a blue belt to win. So I don't know if you know, but Regan Penn, he won the lightweight. He won 6 matches that
Really?
day. Yeah.
I did not know that.
And
That's
that
crazy.
wild. Yeah. So there would be like, joking
That's
around,
crazy.
like one is like all pumped up. I'm here to compete. It takes second. And by the way, never competed again. I think he competed maybe once or twice in another small tournament. He was just a computer guy, just didn't have the interest of like really pursuing. It's like, it's not my thing, but be able to go so relaxed and just do what he does.
I know those are the exact guys that I'm talking about, that I was fortunate, because where I trained was Gainesville, Florida for a while in the gi. And so what we would have is we would have a lot of transient students that were in master's programs at the University of Florida, or they were, TAs, teachers assistants, trying to become professors. And I mean, transient by they were just there for 2-3 years, and they would come and train, and they were killers, and a local tournament would come by. They were full-time students, in master's programs, PhD programs, so they couldn't compete much. But they would go to this local tournament in Orlando. I would see their division, and I was in the scene. So I'm like, man, that he just got second at the Pans. So, he's just here probably to practice for, a bigger tournament. And then my friend would kill him. And I'd be like, what's going on here? Like, and then I would tell him, man, come to the Worlds with me or something. No, I can't. I got finals. I just didn't get it. But to me, that mentality was fascinating to me. Exactly like that story you just told. That's freaking crazy.
Yeah. What would you say? I don't know if some of the best piece of advice for the white belts that you share on your channel. So one of the things that you like to share with them, for someone that is listening right now and, just trying to get, the first steps in jiu-jitsu, what regarding to training. So what do you like to share with them?
Well, I like to tell white belts not to be so hard on themselves. I see so many get so mad at themselves all the time, which is a natural progression for jiu-jitsu, right? They say it makes you humble as you learn. But I think from the start, it's so cliche to say this because I feel like a lot of people would say it, but one, don't be so hard on yourself, and two, have fun. I've always told people, in the end of the day, and people don't like that I say this, but you're paying for the jiu-jitsu. It's money. It's hard-earned money that you're paying the jiu-jitsu. You should have fun. If you're not having fun, maybe it's not for you. Like every day you go to the gym, it should, not every day, obviously take it with a grain of salt, but the majority of the times you go, I think you should be doing it to enjoy it. Sometimes I even see, competitors they don't seem happy, like at all. They're pushing themselves so hard. And I get that you have a goal, you want to attain it. But, one thing I saw, I'm getting off topic and I apologize, but something incredible I saw that legitimately, you have those moments. I think this could be attributed to a lot of people with an entrepreneurial personality, or maybe just people in general. But you have those moments where you read a quote, or you see a 30-second video, where you see somebody do something and it just resonates with you and you just never forget it. Well, one of those moments for me, and again, I apologize for getting off topic, but I think this can apply to white belts, is Mikey Musumeci, who I've trained with a lot when he was in Boston. And I look up to because he's the current black belt world champion at my weight class, which is light feather. But he won the worlds 3 times as a black belt. And he one day posted a status that was very, very open, saying that after he won the worlds at black belt, he went into an extremely deep depression, to the point where he was lost. And he articulated it, because he's a good writer, really well on Facebook. And to summarize what he said, and I hope I'm not butchering this, Mikey, but he basically said that his whole entire life he had worked and devoted so much time and effort to attain this goal, where he thought that the world would just stop when he got it. And he suffered. He went through days that he hated. He cried, he puked, he did it all. And then he finally achieved that goal. And that day, everyone congratulated him. And guess what? The next morning, life went on. He woke up, he made his breakfast, he went to training, and nothing changed. It wasn't like, boom, you win the lotto or something. So he realized, you know, like, was all this worth it? Did I sacrifice all this for it? And to summarize that status again, he ended up saying that he's happy with everything he did, but he didn't do it for the right reasons. He should do it just because it makes him happy, not because he wants to do it. And then he went forward and said he's going to take that mentality of doing it just because he's happy, and that if he's not happy, he won't do it. And he won 2 more black belt world titles. And if you watch that kid train, he's the happiest kid in the room. He's always smiling. And so I think that's an important message, and it's good to have role models like that. You know, we put so much pressure on different things, everybody, whether it's a personal goal or a jiu-jitsu goal. And white belts specifically, to bring it back to your original question, put a lot of pressure on themselves, you know, to do well, and they've never done the sport, and they get really upset when they go home. So I think just have fun, man. Just enjoy the journey, because every month you're going to look back and you're going to have progressed. Every month you're going to look back and say, man, I'm a different person on the mats. And that's important. I always tell white belts after they roll with a guy, if I'm watching the class, like a blue belt that beats him up, taps him 3-4 times, I always pull them aside if I watched it and I can tell they're bothered. I'm like, look, man, in 1 year, 2 years, that's going to be you doing it to another new guy. And the circle of jiu-jitsu is going to continue to flow. So stick with it. And I promise you're going to be right there, man. And I think that's something that a lot of them need to hear, because I want to see the light that they're going to get better. In the beginning, I remember in the beginning, I was like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. This is not going to get easier. And it did. It got a lot easier. So.
Right on. What about one of the best piece of advice that you have received on the mat? Something that stood out with it. Could it be when you're a white belt? Could it be recently? But maybe it's someone that is super experienced that shares something with you, like, I like that. And you kept any concept, any technique, or what do you say?
You know, when you say that, the first thing that comes to mind might sound silly, but I was rolling with my friend Charles Harriet, who's he's a very well-known black belt for his instructionals, and he's a BJJ Globetrotters instructor. And I was rolling with him, and one day, my friend Raul, who was a blue belt, who won a bunch of IBJJF stuff, and myself, I was a blue belt. We were both light featherweight. Charles was a brown. He came in to visit us. And he's like, let's do back control drills. I want to see you guys. You know, we'll do 3 minutes on my back, and I want to see if you can submit me. And, you know, he was a brown belt at the time. So I was like, okay, this is my chance to submit a brown belt. So I went with him, and he would get out. And then my friend Raul, who I always, you know, like went head to head with, same weight, same age, same everything, tapped him. And then I went again, and he got out. And then Raul went again and tapped him. I was like, man, Raul's tapping a brown belt like left and right. And we went again, same result. And so Charles comes up to me and goes, hey, man, Raul's tapped me every time. You haven't got me once. I was like, yeah, I see that. I'm right here, man. And he was like, it's because you have longer legs and you're so flexible in your groins. He's like, you're keeping your knees open way too wide. He's like, squeeze your knees as tight as possible. Keep your heels pinched, and I won't get out. And so I did again, and I tapped him. And then I did again, and I tapped him. And then every day for the rest of my life, when I would take somebody's back, I just remembered that. And like, that's, you know, one little concept: squeeze the knees, keep the heels pinched super tight, and just compensate for your body type. Man, to this day, like, I feel like my back control, maybe, I don't know, maybe it just clicked because I was so mad that Raul was getting him and I wasn't. That's probably what actually happened. But I feel like back control is like my strong point now. Like, if I get the back, man, it's pretty hard to get out.
Cool.
You know.
Hey, give me one, maybe a topic, and I can look. If you want to recommend me, say like, hey, one of my favorite videos that I shot, and then that would be for me and for the listeners, anyone gonna check it out. What are some of the videos that are like, you pat on your back, so like, man, I think I did a good job with this video, sharing a concept?
So there's one where sometimes you make a video, man, and you think it's gonna blow up. You're like, man, this is such a good video. This is gonna change everyone's game, and then it goes and you get like the least views you've ever gotten. I'm just like, what? And one video that I shot, and I was like, this one's good. It's gonna do good, because it's never good when I say that. Actually became one of my most viewed videos, and it's ankle picks from everywhere. And it was I did something different. Instead of filming privately in one of the upstairs rooms, I told my wife to just film me teaching the class. So I taught a class at Bernardo's. It was an hour and a half class, and the topic was ankle picks. And I always like to pick a topic and try to expand on it throughout the class, like most instructors. And she got all the sequences in it. And I feel like that's a very, very useful video for anybody who wants to implement ankle picks. It's the roadmap is there. Just go there, watch it, and get a really good idea of how to start doing it right away.
Cool.
So ankle picks from everywhere.
I will check it out. One thing about reading, do you have the habit of reading all kinds of different stuff, or personal development or business or whatever?
Yeah.
What is a book that has made a big impact on you? Different moment, of course, different books, different moments of your life, but a book that could have helped someone in their entrepreneurial journey.
So one book that I really like, it's actually like sitting on my shelf over there. I want to say I know the name is Blink. I forgot the author. It's a really famous author. I don't want to get up and go look, but Blink was the book. And the book was basically about how your first instinct is usually correct. So for example, if somebody asks you, let me try to find a way to make the example here. Like even if it's like a memory thing, you know, like I'm trying to think of how to explain it. Your first thought is usually correct in a sense of like, if somebody asks you a math problem really quick, like, you know, what's 5 times 5, and really quickly something comes to your head, it's probably correct. If you start to overthink it, sometimes you'll be wrong, right? So if they say, what's 5 times 5? And you're like, oh, 25. And it's obviously it's 25. It's a simple thing, but that first instinct is correct. And it had all the statistics supporting the analysis and the hypothesis of why that is. And it's a useful way to become more decisive. And so the reason that book impacted me, so that people understand, again, the context, is I've always dealt with indecision. My father used to tell me, because, you know, he's a successful businessman and I was the most indecisive kid ever. Like, I mean, he would be like, what do you want? Do you want, you know, vanilla ice cream or chocolate? I'd be like, well, if I got vanilla, I can't have chocolate. But if I got chocolate, I can't. And it would be like an hour-long thing. And so he would always be like, Aaron, indecision is a decision. So you're done. And, you know, what do you want to get at the store? This or that. Indecision is a decision. Indecision is a decision. So I heard that so much. And I wanted to, you know, more confidence to become more decisive. And man, that book, I'm very decisive now. And I just trust my gut, my instinct a lot. Obviously take it with a grain of salt, right? Everything with a grain of salt. But that was a great book.
And there's a book that triggered me to remind me the Mel Robbins book, the 5-second rule. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No, but it's not.
Yeah, which is really cool. I listened to audiobook a few times. She's awesome, but it was basically on that. You have like a good 5 seconds to like, until you get the time that the chatter and start coming in, like, wait a minute, but this, you know, it's like the first one, boom, comes in. And then she always, she'll think about it. She started with this when she had she was going through a rough time in life, but she was always like hitting the snooze. So she started getting that, like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm just going to launch out of bed, you know, because by the 5 second, like, okay, you need to go up. If you're not like, oh no, well, maybe I can sleep a little bit more. And then you start kind of like, all right, I'm in, you know, so it's kind of like, you know, you need to get up, let's go. Don't give it time. So it's a cool book to check it out. It's entertaining. And she's been around all kinds. You can find a bunch of stuff on YouTube with her sharing.
Man, I'll probably read that because I love that. I love that theory from Blink, and it sounds the same. And you never know. You never know when somebody is going to throw something at you that you need to make a very important decision that can impact the rest of your life. I mean, I've done jobs where I'm talking to a friend of a friend. Like, here's a good example. Like a year ago, I was at dinner with my father-in-law and a friend. And he's a big guy in the boating industry, and there's a lot of money in the boating industry. And they were all talking about, you know, boats. And one guy was like, "Oh, could you help me build a website and do this?" And I'm like, I mean, I guess I hadn't done consultation in a while, and I know that my rate could be higher if I did it. And so we're just talking, and he's like, "Okay, well, what does it cost?" And then he's like, "Man, I got to make a quick. Whatever I say now, even if I don't work with him or I do, he's going to use it against me. So if I say, oh, it's $200 an hour, that's going to be the bar that I set, or $50 an hour." So you got, like you said, you got 5 seconds to make a good decision. And you just, the first thing that comes to your head is probably the right one. It's probably what you feel comfortable with doing. And so you never know when you're going to need to make a quick decision.
Cool, cool. All right, we're getting close to the end of the interview. So tell us, man, what's exciting going on? What do you got? Projects that you have? So let us know.
Man, so everything with Fanatics is just growing at a very fast rate. I could tell you from my perspective, because I'm the one in charge of it, we're launching 100 different instructionals per month, and it
Jeez.
just keeps on going. And I'm filming 3 new instructionals at the end of June. We didn't get to touch on this because it's not related to anything, but I'm obsessed with fishing. So I've got a lot of fishing things going on. I just wrote an article in one of the biggest fishing magazines. So it's cool that I think I opened some doors there.
Right on.
There might be a fishing instructional coming. So there's a lot going on, training jiu-jitsu, black belt debut. Hopefully we get a brick and mortar for Rise K9. It's just keep pushing along and just trying to open new doors. And my YouTube, I've got some big plans for it that I don't want to spoil yet, but I could tell you that there might be some pretty nice mats coming to my garage with a logo and some pretty nice camera gear. So I hope there's going to be growth on all fronts.
Right on, man. Man, congratulations on all your endeavors. You're definitely a hustler, making it happen in every different angle, trying to grow and been following, as I mentioned, not as long, but maybe probably since you started, because I don't know exactly when, but I know that I've been watching your videos for a little bit. And man, I'm going to put some links for people to check it out. And
awesome, man.
Any final words, and we can wrap it up.
Man, I want to thank you for having me. I've actually known about your thing for a very long time, because I believe, I might be mistaken, but I trained with a guy. So I'm from Fort Myers, Florida, and I went to school in Gainesville. And every summer I would come home for 3 months and I would train with Marcelo Pereira.
Yes,
so
yes. He's
I'm
in Naples now, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you know him, because I swear I've seen pictures with you.
Yes, he's from Nova União too, black belt, former world champion, badass.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he's one of the best guys I've ever trained with, because he was a rooster weight. But anyways, yeah, I knew about BJJ mental coach back then and stuff. Like, I'm talking years ago. So you've been grinding for a while, man.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing pictures of, I believe it was you, him, Bruno Bastos, Hobson, just a ton of you guys. And it's crazy that I'm here now talking to you, and it's awesome, man.
Cool. Right on. I appreciate it, buddy. And everyone, keep in touch. If you have any questions, you can always send me a message. Can send me. Usually I'm on Instagram, Gustavo Dantas BJJ. And I'll see you all soon. Os
guys, see ya.